Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Fox 10 Newsmaker Sunday. I'm John Hook. Over the next half hour, we're going to talk about SB 1070 and the backdrop of the police union going back to Washington, D.C. to talk to the Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder, to give their feelings to the Attorney General about how they feel SB 1070, the new immigration law, will work, and that their belief is it is workable. Levi Bolton is a lobbyist consultant for the Police Law Enforcement Association, a 32-year cop on the streets for Phoenix, got on board in 1975. You just got back from meeting with Attorney General Holder, and I'm going to show the piece that we did on you Friday night in a moment. But just in general, will they listen to you? Does he have an open mind about where you're coming from, that you feel it is not a burden for police to uphold this law in the field?
Well, I think first I have to paint the picture for you. When we got in the room, we found, initially we thought the meeting, since we asked for it, was going to involve the rank and file folks. But we found that there had been other invitees to the barbecue. Police chiefs, representatives of command groups. There were sheriffs there, or I should say representatives of National Sheriff's Coalition, those kinds of things, Troopers Association. We weren't the only labor folks there, but there were folks on the other side of the issue. We weren't interested in having a debate with the Attorney General. We wanted to offer a different perspective. If you have both sides of the issue there, particularly in our meeting, it's not that we were resistant to it, it's just that to some extent, it was almost misleading. So I guess that kind of set the tenor prior to us walking in the room. They told us maybe about 12 hours before that there would be other folks in attendance. For me, that was disappointing.
Let me roll the piece. This is Alex Savage, actually, from Thursday night, tape number 1. This kind of sets the stage, your meeting and the union's meeting with Attorney General Eric Holder. Take a look.
During a sit-down with Attorney General Eric Holder, members of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association tackled the issue of profiling. Levi Bolton says officers are upset by the idea they will target Hispanics under the new immigration law.
Be offended on behalf of the 14,000 police officers in the state of Arizona to say that on July 29th, we somehow will lose our professionalism and unilaterally become racist. See, bills aren't racist, people are.
Bolton says he told Holder about a City of Phoenix policy that allows officers to call in federal immigration agents for people involved in crimes. He says that policy has worked well, and the new immigration law will just go a few steps further. Bolton says his union went to D.C. to push back against some of the outspoken critics.
Not only do I believe that there is fear, I believe it's growing. And what happens is it's like a wildfire, that it tends to be contagious. Misinformation continues to be the fuel.
Bolton says the Attorney General didn't ask any questions during the meeting. He just listened. Still, union members are hopeful that Holder will consider their side when he decides whether or not to file suit against Arizona's new law.
I'm optimistic because I'm going to take him at his word. He's the top cop. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Holder, and I'm hoping, and I'm looking at making this assertion only from his background. I think that he will examine this very carefully and judiciously.
And Levi Bolton, who you saw there, who is a lobbyist and consultant for the Police Law Enforcement Association and a 32-year officer for the city of Phoenix, is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. When you're talking to the Attorney General, do you believe he had an open mind about this? And what was it that you wanted to get across to him?
A number of things. Knowing we only had an hour, it was kind of hard to condense months of frustration. Number one, the idea of misinformation and disinformation circulated about the bill. Taking bits and pieces and interpreting that as the whole intent or the whole reading of the provisions of Senate Bill 1070. The next one was to unilaterally, and I think when we keep saying the bill is racist, on July 29th, the bill will become law, so then who then becomes racist? There are 14,000, or about thereabouts, 14,000 police officers in the state of Arizona. Fine professionals, many of which have paid for their belief in their defense of the United States Constitution with their lives. I find it patently offensive to say that on that day, each and every one of them will suddenly become unprofessional.
Let me ask you about that for a minute, because when we hear, we know the police chiefs went back there, Jack Harris did, and he was brought back here because of a tragedy within the Phoenix Police Department, an officer killed in the line of duty, so he did not get a meeting with Eric Holder. but chiefs seem to have one agenda. You guys in the union have another. Are you comfortable that within the union, which is about 2,000 Phoenix?
About 2,500.
2,500. That they agree with your position that they want to enforce this law? Not only is it their duty under the law, but that they really want to get into this business of potentially finding out who's here legally and who's not.
Okay. Well, the first thing we did is police officers never ask for expanded authority. We didn't ask for more tools. We asked for someone to take the padlocks off the tools we already had. That's the first thing. So we've already had the ability to do this because we were doing it in the past. Policies changed that prevented. Senate Bill 1070's initial genesis had really nothing to do with what you see the final product. It was an anti-sanctuary city policy. In other words, stop handcuffing police officers from partnering with ICE.
To where you couldn't ask.
To where we couldn't ask.
Couldn't ask the question, where are you from?
Yes, just so you to kind of put it in stark contrast and bring us into sharp relief. John, at bank robberies we call the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We get counterfeit money occasionally showing up at convenience markets and other places. We contact the Secret Service. We contact the postal inspectors. We contact Department of Agriculture with food stamps. We do this without any kind of hoopla, and it's just a matter of course of doing business. But the minute that we talk about contacting ICE or our immigration federal partners, you would think that we were talking about violating the most sacred of compacts with some kind of super secret violation of some policy.
It's because race is involved. Race is the gasoline on the fire in this issue.
And you know, the unfortunate part about it is illegal immigration is not a race, it's conduct. And that's the sad part about this. Without sounding insensitive, and I've heard the arguments on all sides of it, first and foremost, police officers have never wanted to be at odds with their community. That's the unfortunate part. That's where this has come. Because while the police chiefs and politicians have churned this thing to such that now the nefarious actors will be those men and women who have to go out and talk to victims and witnesses, when clearly there's provisions in the bill that talk about how officers are to deal with those folks. That's the sad part about it. But you never hear about that. The ability that the bill allows for officers to disengage if they feel that it could fetter their investigations. The fact that PC, or probable cause, or I should say reasonable suspicion, needs to exist upon the time of the contact. Otherwise, a predicate must exist. Very few people ever talk about this.
How did we get to this point in the city of Phoenix where, for a long time, you just didn't ask the question? If somebody's legal status was something that was kind of unfolding during your investigation, you were kind of told to take a hands-off approach, right? Right. Don't go there.
I think a number of factors came about.
How did we get to that point?
I think it's, to say a single answer would probably do it a disservice. I think there were political pressures. The death of 6 Phoenix police officers and 6 seriously wounded as a consequence over a period of time.
At the hands of illegal immigrants. Of
illegal immigrants. The fact that we had girls molested or raped in Chandler, Arizona, the death of our rancher, the fact that citizens were also, we have a very strong, the rank and file component of law enforcement has had a rather wonderful relationship with the community, with our community partners. As a matter of fact, the block watch associations hold their meetings in our offices. And we want to make sure that they always have that interaction. We've always tried to keep a liaison with the minority community to try to do everything we can to be, one, responsive and to answer their questions. But I think what you're looking at is this compendium of philosophy that, okay, we're tired. You can keep asking for the federal government to do something. And then suddenly they said, okay, we're done. We need a state fix. We need something to enable our men and women. And I think what the impetus for the controversy is, see, the federal laws have already been on the books. Here comes the real answer to the question. My God, somebody's actually going to enforce it now.
Because it's there.
Oh, it's there.
And in fact, the federal law is not, is really a little more draconian than the state law.
It is.
It's just not enforced.
Of course it is.